Mission fucking accomplished. Goon Swarm is not a threat.
Good luck with your old dumb nullsec war snuffed out #1. Anunnaki Keep Star is next, and then come on.
There, and then you were just going to fucking magically jump into EVE Online in a system, and it was just going to load, and nobody was going to call you fucking stupid later?
There's an Eagle fleet that has dive bombed a Megatron fleet. This is the bravest shit I have ever seen in my life.
The best possible shot to do something to the Imperium, and you fucked it up.
I talked a lot of shit over the last couple months. It's time to fucking eat some. And I showed up here to eat shit. Like,
the reason that this keep started and get contested, and I cannot make this up, is because of tie-dye.
Guess where goons are going to live after this war is over?
Current plan is 319, I believe, right?
So,
Hi, sick.
I can tell you very clearly, our Diplos didn't even fucking care. So, like,
White daddy.
Hello, everybody. It is Post-Fanfest. My face is huge for some reason on the screen. I'll sort that out later. And we have a large number of guests with us today.
So many guests.
Yeah, one of whom being displayed isn't actually here because this looks like last week's page. But, you know, maybe this is just a mistake just to try and keep people on their toes. It's a deliberate thing. But Rain Row is not here. But I'm going to tell you who is here. Obviously, you can already see myself, Phantomite. You can see Redline. You can see Luke. But people that you can't see who are nonetheless here, we have Ravelin from RC. We have Sven Bauer from Snuffed Out. We got Kazanir from Goon Swarm. We got Dujek from Brave. We've also got Jinx from Brave, making a long-awaited return to the show. And we also are joined by Villy, currently from Pandemic Legion. Who will he be with next? Who knows? We will see. Hello, everybody. Now, who here has been present themselves at FanFest this weekend?
I'm raising my hand. I don't know if you can see it.
I can see it. It shows up as like a little green border because you're a robot. Did you have fun today?
Today was pretty relaxed. Just had breakfast. There wasn't anything really going on today. But last couple of days was fun. Seeing everyone in person was fun, as always.
Good, excellent. Did you enjoy the any of the talks other than obviously the keynote and the expansion reveal?
I went to the data panel. That was super interesting. Always love me some data. I went to the Little Things panel, which was also pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
Just hearing people's suggestions. A lot of bad suggestions, a lot of good suggestions. Then I also went to, kind of side note, putting the balance panel and the art panel at the same time is criminal. I want to go to both. They made me choose. It's annoying.
And they're not recorded either, are they?
I think they are recorded. They're going to be on the YouTube channel.
Oh, excellent. Well, there's some
only the main hall was streamed and the panels weren't.
Mm-hmm.
But they should be uploaded at some point, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah,
well,
that was also fun.
Look forward to those. Also, if anybody in the chat, also was at FanFest and has any recommendations for non-live broadcasted events, then we'd love to hear what you'd recommend that we watch when CCP releases those on video. But I'm going to suggest that we start talking about the actual meat of this FanFest. What the majority of people wanted to really know
there was meat.
There was meat.
Sorry.
There was meat. Now I'm not going to try and
we can't hear you. I can keep talking, but we can't actually hear you.
Luke, I'm not going to try and tell you that the meat was necessarily of high quality, but there are definitely some things that I'm really interested in that were announced.
Yeah, we all know what you're interested in.
Yeah, but can you intro them for like
15
more seconds?
We will talk about that as one of the last things that we go into today. But it's always nice to see some new ships. The new ships this time were variants rather than an entirely new hull that only one or two people in an entire region will own at a time. And we've got Tech 2 carriers, but these new Navy destroyers are going to be things that you will regularly see all over space, obviously, especially in faction war, where those ships kind of shine. Guys, are any of you here already planning to be looking to pick up any of the new ships, be they cheap or expensive?
I'm definitely going to get some of the new carriers. Gotta start turning my Lynx ults into carriers now.
Into Lynx carriers, essentially. Now,
yeah, one of the command carriers is on my list. I don't know which one yet. I need to sit down and, unlike Sven, I
like
haven't
that they get.
trying to work it out yet.
I like that they get the fighter bonuses, not just like command burst bonuses. It's pretty nice. So you're actually like a support carrier, not just like a Lynx carrier. It's pretty cool.
So let's talk about these carriers, right? They have some improvements over a regular Tech 1 carrier, but they also have some extra abilities on top. Now, one thing that seems to have passed a lot of people by, some people have noticed it, is that the Tech 2 command carrier that's based on the Chimera, it uses something a lot more akin to the old Chimera model rather than the current I-beam model, and I'm really happy to see that back.
I was just gonna say, I think the art team, as always, kind of knocked it out of the park with these. They all look amazing. Kind of more bulky versions of the carrier models, which I appreciate. I think they look great.
Just
they
saying
do that with a lot of.
Saying last week, Fan, I asked on this stream for CCP to bring back the old Chimera model.
Yeah, it looks like they delivered. Surely they were listening.
I mean, it's very. There has been a tell a good couple of 2 or 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that they still were keeping the old Chimera model around because when they did, over the course of a few months, a trailer for each of the races leading up to new faction warfare, the Caldari trailer showed a brief clip of a Chimera being piloted into the surface of one of the Gallente planets. And that very specifically used the old model because, of course, it took place in the past. So CCP has been keeping that model on ice for internal use, and now it's here for everybody to enjoy, albeit at a much higher price. We don't have any word on pricing yet, but do you think it's going to be fair to say that these are likely to be in the same ballpark as the increase that Lancer Dreads are over Dreads?
Yeah.
I
mean, the
I
teams
expect them to be slightly cheaper. Like, I'd like to see them slightly cheaper. I think early on they're going to be, to the moon.
What's the? Do you know what the price difference between Dreads and carriers is? Are carriers cheaper?
Yeah, they're cheaper.
Yeah,
they were a lot more expensive for a long time.
I'd imagine that, considering that T1 Dreads are more expensive than T1 carriers, that we're likely to see something similar with the T2 versions of the ships.
A similar sort of ratio of uplift in price.
But who knows?
Now, I haven't had a deep look at these stats. Redline, would you want to pick any of them and bring its stats up? Now,
yeah, let's start with the first one, the Amar one,
sure.
Salvation.
That's interesting, guys, isn't it? That Redline is Amar first.
Interesting. I don't think that's interesting.
It's alphabetical.
Then it's just the first one that they talked about, so it's the first screenshot that I have. Please carry
I was going to say, right off the rip,
mind.
an interesting point is that it has 5 mids versus the 4 mids of the Archon.
Yes.
While retaining
they needed to give it an extra slot somewhere for being Tech 2, didn't they?
Yeah, and I forget. Do these have 4? They do have 4 launch tubes. Ooh, and they can use 4 support fighters. Interesting.
They can. So my question is, for anybody who's taken a look at these, are we going to see these be, if we put the price aside, are these stronger direct combat options than regular carriers?
No.
Well, they're going to be stronger boosters. I think that's about it.
Do they not get
No, they only get.
They don't get damage bonuses, right?
Yeah, this is like purely newt bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just gotta double check and see if the
regular light tubes. I'm just looking a little bit closer at that. 4 tubes, 2 of which can be light fighters, and all 4 of which can be support fighters.
Yeah.
Now
I mean,
that's what I like.
T1 fighters don't get any damage bonuses, or the T1 carriers don't get any damage bonuses either. So it'll do the same damage as a carrier 2 fighter, like 2 damage fighters out, but like I'm not sure. I mean, I can see it going both ways. I don't think people would use them as pure combat options, like a whole doctrine, but
yeah,
maybe.
So they do have stronger resists as well. Does anybody know how these compare? Is this like Tech 1.25 resist?
No, it's full Tech 2.
It's full Tech 2. Are you sure it's
These
full
resists are
Tech
pretty
2?
insane. The other thing I might add is it gets an extra low slot in comparison to the Archon. So these are going to be incredibly tanky.
Look at the shield resist of
yeah, good
this.
point.
Like if it was 1.5, like a paladin, it would be not bad.
Okay. So these are interesting. Where do you think you will see these being actually used outside of this is my shiny toy I'm getting a kill mail with?
Everywhere, dude.
Well,
I think
is it 10 bill or 60
did
bill?
you hear the typing?
I think that's.
Well, they're looking at Lancer Dreads. Lancer Dreads landed around like I want to say 8 bill, 8.5 to build.
Okay.
And
they're a little bit less.
All right, so like what, 7.5 around there?
6.5.
6.5. Okay, so that's not that expensive.
Yeah,
so
These are very good
historically
value
low,
propositions.
If we consider that, go ahead.
Moon Goose is historically low right now, still, right?
Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah,
checked in a minute, but that is a big influence on this. They used to be pretty much a lot higher, and I think you could see that again if they're committed to that sort of like keeping Tech 2 tied to that, right? Which it always has been. So I think it will come in low
2/3 of the
because
cost
of
the,
that.
right, it's the cap comps.
These might, I mean, depending on how people fit them into doctrine usage, I could genuinely see like a bump in Moongoo prices because of the demand for these.
The sheer volume that they'll consume.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not about the amount that they consume, right? That's what sets the price. You can't figure they're going to be much more than a Lancer, right? But if their Lancers are not that used, right?
Yeah.
If these are very, very popular, and suddenly everyone is going to train the awful conduit skills and whatever else they add, good heavens to Betsy knows how many skill points they're going to add for this thing. But yes, that's what would impact the economy, is if you saw like every carrier pilot wants one of these. That would be crazy.
I can definitely see a temporary spike in Moongoo to like pushing these prices definitely around 10 bill. But
yeah, the first ones that are going to hit the market are going to be, they're going to be gouged.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that shouldn't last too long, right? Tons and tons of people have carrier BPOs, and moreover, hundreds of unused BPCs that they thought would never be relevant again. So I imagine the invention will kick right off. I wouldn't think that would take too long. But yeah, if enough people want them, you could see Moongoo's increase from its pretty bad times right now.
So speaking of, go on. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you. Redline will be back when he fixes that. What kind of fleet do you think that these will be genuinely, because it's a good choice, used in? I mean, given that they have the strongest links in the game, these are going to be used for fairly large fleets.
So
yeah, exactly. I think that any large fleet, especially like a battleship fleet where you would see fax support being used, you might see something like these carriers being in it.
Because obviously they are infinitely more maneuverable than a fax, but not as maneuverable as a battleship.
In heavy armor brawls in Lisek, where people are not moving around as much on grid, I don't necessarily see crazy amounts of like at least instant usage in the bigger nullsec fights, just because typically nullsec relies on a lot more subcap based logi and doesn't fight around like a single point as much. I can definitely see this in basically every home defense doctrine where you drop one just for the point of it with how good the resists are.
at these projected prices, this isn't really a big deal in terms of but what if we lose it? It's too expensive for a large fleet as it is.
It's like, I don't know, 7 blops, 8 blops fit, which
It's like isn't it like 1.5
twice a
decent
fax.
faxes?
Yeah, exactly. I know it's getting thrown away all the time.
Yeah. And in some ways, it's going to be a lot more survivable than a damnation. But in some other ways, it's going to be more vulnerable than a damnation.
I mean, it does force the enemy to commit larger assets to really kill it, which,
The
is a
Lynx
good thing,
range
but-
isn't fantastic. I was
So is
kind
it
of
shorter?
expecting. No. I mean, it's the range of a super carrier, so it goes 100 kilometers or almost 100 kilometers, but not.
That's pretty good.
That's that. I mean,
It's
Completely
better than
reasonable
small
to
things,
touch
but
super
like
carrier, right?
So what?
It's just completely reasonable to touch super carrier range. I don't think going beyond that is probably a great idea.
I mean,
you certainly wouldn't want to replace super carriers to be
Oh yes,
used as
wouldn't want to
boosters.
replace all those people using super carriers as links.
No, that's not my point. I'm saying that like
okay,
its ability to be the best links is also dependent on your fleet being close enough to it. Like if you're flying something that wants to be somewhat more, you're not going to see like people bringing the.
You're not going to bring it on
like for bar guests or
battleship
something,
fleets or
whatever.
bar
You
guest
got to be
fleets,
like
right?
sitting there.
But if you're like defending a structure or something like that, these would be very good for that. Just like the home defense thing.
I mean,
I
it's
think-
basically any scenario you drop a fax, I can foresee people dropping one of these.
But I also
Especially
think that there's a
people
nice
resist-
aspect of it with the support fighters of having more
Actual
E-War on
gameplay.
grid. Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say actual gameplay for the Lynx
actual
pilot. is
gameplay,
kinda
right?
interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, something to
Instead
do
of
for
just-
a carrier pilot besides pressing F1 and on fighters.
Well, no, not
other
necessarily
fighters.
carrier pilot. More for like historically, Lynx alts have been alts with very little to do, apart from maybe a little bit of like E-War in your mids or.
Right. You mean the inverse
Tiny
that these board guys now have fighter gameplay, right?
That there's
Yeah, they've got
things to
something to
actually
do.
do for people that fly Lynx often.
I mean,
This is
going to be
that's
very
what they used to
limited.
say about that's what they used to say about carriers when they had triage, but everyone turned out to not love that.
I find it a little bit hard to believe that people are going to use the newts here for any like large scale engagement, and that they're just going to take points and webs.
I
that are
mean,
way more impactful.
it depends. Like, I think I haven't seen the resists and the low slot layout
Aren't the
of
new
the.
fighters just really bad? Like
No.
just on their own
They're
terms.
they're pretty decent on an Archon.
Tell you what, these
Like
are going
bonus,
to
they're pretty
be
good, especially with the buff to the carrier fighter base.
The
Before
new
with the amount of trade off that you had to do, it was pretty hard to make the justification to ever run them. But like if you're fighting like Kikis, for example, a bunch of newt fighters are pretty good.
like the salvation,
that
if it takes all newt fighters, is like slightly worse than 4 heavy newts worth of newting power.
We'll move on to the Navy destroyers in a second, but I do want to wonder out loud, as not a resident of wormholes, are these going to be extremely strong additions to defense in wormholes? You know, where you already have it in the system.
Maybe.
They seem very lukewarm on them, but like
Okay.
on a day-to-day, if you're doing like Bushido fights, you're not taking this over a Dread.
No.
Where you have like
That's a good point.
your 3 best.
Like
But yeah,
like
is this a top 3 capital? You have to bring 3. Is this one of the 3?
No.
not when you could bring
Not
the Dread
as clear, right? I can imagine situations, but that's certainly not every situation.
Okay. All right. Cool. I tell you what, Redline, do you want to pick a destroyer of your choice and bring its stats up?
I do. I just have to find one. So.
Okay. Well, we have the.
There we go.
Do we still
I
call
found
them tier 2 destroyers in the same way that
I think we can call
used
them
to
whatever
in-
we want.
Okay, well, I'll just
I
call
do
them
like,
Navy
this-
destroyers 2.
This is something
Yeah.
pointed out during the balance panel. Is there are now, I think, it's 6 ships in the game that are CNI.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
that's not hard or anything.
The 𝗨𝗧𝗧𝗘𝗧𝗛 War is
mean-
misnamed here. It's actually the 𝗨𝗧𝗧 War Fleet issue, not the 𝗨𝗧 War Navy issue. And that brings us up
Who's
to
keeping
4
track?
TFIs.
Oh yeah, there's another TFI now. Damn. All right.
I mean, in our alliance, I frequently refer to PNIs, and I always mean Prophecy Navy issues, but that confuses especially people who've just joined us, who it typically
I would
means.
have thought it was a Phoenix.
Yeah, exactly. I suppose that's the more common, but I don't really touch those at this period of my gameplay. So
Well, here's the Corax Navy issue. It's a pretty cool looking ship.
I mean,
looks
hey,
like a slightly more buff Corax.
I mean, I don't
Say,
think anybody has ever
never
had
missed
anything negative to say about what the art department do.
Yep, our
No.
team.
Everything they
never
do is pretty much always on point.
Well,
Apart
they
from-
were
like,
apart from,
showing
like,
off some
performance.
rather terrible UI suggested changes, but that's
Well, that's not going to be the art team.
that's a different day.
You're
art.
wrong, actually. The UI
What's
was like the features presented in the UI suggestions were, or in the concept UI was good. It just hasn't gone through an art pass.
That's a fair
That's
point.
kind of what I was hoping. I was really hoping.
Okay.
But look, be honest, you have seen games that look like that when they're in a released state. And I was really, really hoping that Eve wasn't going to become one. So I'm thank you for
While
that
it's
so
become
much.
a bit more modern, like I think generally the Eve UI is kind of stuck to a bit more like the new module icons aren't something completely new. They're still kind of reminiscent of Eve Online.
Their art direction has stayed relatively consistent. Honestly, the Photon UI revamp a couple years ago went so good, you guys, in comparison to how it could have gone. Like, it was not by any means perfect. I understand that, but man,
it could have been a bigger dumpster fire.
It could have been a giant dumpster fire. Yeah, I have
think
nothing.
Photon UI is great.
Who here remembers a brief period of time where CCP swapped all of the weapon icons for miniature model pictures of the weapons?
I don't remember that, thankfully.
We had a period of time earlier this year where all the modules bugged out, and like one of my teammates on the tournament team had all their icons swapped for T-shirt icons. So
yeah,
like,
there's some like shared cache issues that were going on where just random textures were replacing with other random textures. It's kind of funny. Bunch of keep stars in your Corax low.
So here's my next question about the Navy destroyers. Are there any of them that any of you are particularly looking forward to purchasing and using?
The one that I've got on the screen right now, I'm looking forward to purchasing and using.
Okay, well, I'm actually fairly interested in the first one you put up, the Corax Navy issue, because the regular, simply because the regular Corax is so bad. It'll be nice for there to be a potentially just about usable version of it in the game.
Leave the Corax alone, dude. How are you just gonna say that about one of the most popular destroyers in the game?
It's really not one of the most popular destroyers in the game.
We're gonna look that up.
Popular is doing a lot of heavy lifting
it's
on
at
that
least
conversation.
that spot.
if it's one of the most popular destroyers in the game, it's because you're given it if you do certain things. That's
New player art.
You guys are really short and angry mustache on this show. He would know the answer to this just without having to look it up.
Well,
wow.
I think it's a super cool looking
wrong.
ship. I'm just glad that there's a potentially usable version of it coming. But show us what else we've got. Let's have a look at the Algos.
The Corax is number 225 on the top on the list of top ships.
Oof. Out of all ships, sure. But how about out of destroyers?
Oh,
I
don't
imagine
know
it's
how to
8
do the advanced filters.
out of tech ones.
I'll look into that.
Thank you, Sven. You let us know when you found that. The Algos Navy
It's
issue
the stats guy.
seems like a bit of a meme by swapping its signature, its signature drone focus to gaining a bonus for web drone velocity decrease, like the Merm Navy, which is a borderline unusable bonus.
Just from a lore perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but are web drones not Minmatar?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, cool,
they use Minotaur drone models, don't they?
Yeah, they sure do.
Tell you what,
It's kind of funny.
perhaps even worse, Redline. I don't know if you noticed, but in the expansion trailer, they showed the Navy Algos flying through a battle being shield repaired by a Kirin.
Yeah.
Or it might have been a Bantam, one or the other. But I'll
Still a cool trailer,
three
though.
mids.
Speaking
It's
of
got
the
three mids.
carriers, they did show the new carriers using heavy drones. So
yeah,
people were
using
hoping
fighter
that
bombers.
That was in fact not accurate to what was coming.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Sadly.
Okay. Well, when I take a look at the Algos Navy issue, it's not going to make a good shield tanker anyway because it's only got 3 mids. But it is otherwise just a few extra stats are bumped and it gains that status webifier drone factor of velocity bonus. So it might be cool. The thing is, the regular vanilla Algos is a very powerful destroyer as it is. It's an extremely flexible platform. It does plenty of damage. So I think it's probably fair that the Navy issue doesn't just simply add to what it's already got. Which one do you want to bring up next? Which one are you going to bring up next, Redline?
Well, those are carriers. So let's talk about the Tau War.
Destroys. The Tau War Navy issue now. Yeah, fair. So who can tell me what's actually different with the Tau War? You are rapidly cycling pictures there, Redline.
It's a shield boost bonus. Interesting.
Hold on one second. I'm just going to interrupt for a second because the knife fight over Ansiblexes starts in like 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
As soon as
we've got 10 minutes. Listen.
As soon as we go through the things that happened at FanFest, which arguably for us
I got
are
some
a
more
little
then.
meager,
I got some more.
Jump in.
All right, listen, we will get to it.
The FAC War stuff?
I'd like to talk about the new, Battle for New Eden stuff, which looks to me like... do you remember how last year the big CCP's idea of a headline feature was freelance jobs?
Hey,
well,
come on.
Cradle of War, thank you. Military campaigns. Now, I think it's so super cool that CCP's headline launch item for Cradle of War is NPC freelance jobs.
That's a fact.
You like that more or less than my suggestion from last time I was on the show when we had no idea what it was going to be? Because you hated that.
What was it? Remind me what your suggestion was again.
Oh, that was like being able to declare a war target for yourself, because they were talking about how this was going to impact player wars, but it's impacting player wars if you're doing something that the NPCs already want you to do.
Now,
yeah, I do think it's kind of interesting, personally. Like, from maybe it's not the most broad-reaching feature, though.
No,
I will say, like, at least historically, the big pushes for like capturing FAC War systems have been pretty player-driven. Like, they just want to take them. That's why they push really hard. So maybe having that be a bit more like structurally reinforced by actual objectives in game would be interesting to create a bit more conflict and create more like kind of convey or get people into FAC War and into like caring about FAC War.
Yes,
I think this is good for new players because it just layers another layer of incentives on top of stuff that they already have to
just
do.
Like doing plexes, like why am I doing these plexes? Is there like an overarching reason? And
if you look at
gives room for that.
If you look at the player type, like if you look up at MMO player types about like how they want to engage in the game, adding this everywhere they have, I think does engage a whole
like subset
different part of players. And I think I really push for the corp jobs and all this, so I think it's good to see them continuing on using it. If it's worth a whole expansion, that's a different debate. But I think it will engage more people. It will matter how much. Like, are these freelance jobs when they're done? Will it actually impact the war, or that's what they'll have to sell.
Yeah. So I think, and just to jump in, because I wanted to say this, because this is something that I've noticed about the last few years of development in the game specifically. There's been new funnels that have been made. So if you look at these military campaigns and even Exordium as like a funnel, they are moving new players as they join the game kind of down a path. So from high sec through the military campaigns and then into faction warfare. And then, we'll see what that bridge becomes between low sec and null sec. But I think that we're next in line, gang.
I'm not sure they even need a bridge, right? I think.
Wait. Who's we? Who's next in line?
Nullsec.
I think he's on about funneling new players from.
He's
this
talking about completely
null.
AFK players because that's what he is.
I think,
but
Yes, I'm asking, what are you saying? Are we next in line to be funneled into lowsec, or are you saying they're going to funnel players to us?
Funnel players to us, I think, as from
Yes, funnel players to
I
us.
think it was actually quite aggressive. I think Redline was pointing at all of us in the channel and in the chat and going, "You're next."
I think.
No,
I mean, nullsec. The reason nullsec is the majority of the player base essentially, and has these giant blocks being dominant, is because they become good at recruitment, right?
Yeah.
And the problem the game is having is they're not great at dealing with everybody else, and they're not great at attracting a wider group of players to try it in the first place, and then keeping them around, right? We're already grabbing everyone who fits more or less into the the block architecture very aggressively. That's what it does.
I think you hit the nail on the head, right? Like one of the things I both love, but also his longest criticism is, it is the old, 20 games in a trench coat thing. Getting into Eve is pretty impenetrable, or used to be a lot more impenetrable. I think CCP, FC, whatever you want to call them, have probably understandably seen, well, actually, we need to create this new player funnel, because at some point, the vets are just going to wither away and go and do other things. And they're not bringing people on and continuing to engage with the game unless they get sucked into big null-sec alliances, in which case they stay around maybe for a bit longer.
I was going to say
they probably just realise they need to work on that experience. It just means that things like FanFest leave very little meat on the bone for players that are less focused on that experience.
Just to jump in real quick, I don't think that what they're going to do to funnel people into nullsec is going to funnel them into already existing groups. I think it's going to hopefully create the drive for groups that exist currently to break themselves into nullsec. That's what I think should happen.
Necessarily any reason, like they don't need to do any recruitment for the blocks. Like the people that join the game after reading about these big fights are already looking for that kind of experience. Whereas like, in my opinion, at least, Eve really shines when you find a social group, and generally those are focused around PvP. And I think FAC War is a great place to kind of find like a group of friends, a group of players to like get into the game with, which is why I am kind of excited like for this feature. I think getting people from high sec that necessarily don't care about any of the player like PvP stuff, moving them, giving them a reason to engage with the PvP systems and exposing them in a way that kind of lets them dip their toes in a bit while fighting for maybe one of the non-player factions. I think that's an interesting idea, because getting them in contact with other people in PvP opens up the door for them to, I don't know, maybe start talking to them, maybe join their group. And I think you see a lot more like the reason why FanFest is dominated by player groups is because the people who really get engaged with the game are the people that find a group in Eve in the community that they can really like latch onto.
I think it's even simpler than that. I think the people that stick in EVE Online are the people who are good at making goals for themselves and then finding places where they can achieve those goals. So Highbrand in the chat was saying, do new players stay longer in low sec or null sec? I think it depends on what that player's goal is. And I think what we're seeing as far as like development is concerned is that we've got a sandbox, right? And FC is putting rails in our sandbox essentially. And it's still fundamentally a sandbox because people can get off the rails at any point in time just like Exordia, you can leave and never come back. But you can get off these rails at any point in time, or you can stay on them for as long as you need to. It's about having things to do. And then if you are a person who is told, hey, go do this thing in this system, and then you find 3 other dudes that are doing that same thing in that system, boom, maybe you just made 3 friends. You never know. And that's
it's going to take a while to
right?
To be able to fully judge the military campaign system, because CCP said that it will roll out over 3 expansions. So just I think also there's a very good chance that this comes out and it feels a little bit half-baked and people feel a little bit like, oh, is this it? In the same way that that freelance projects without ACLs originally and with few ways of delivering on the particular projects, like
it better not be the same
I really
way.
hope
I'm
that
telling
like
you
the
right
whole
now, if it's the same way, there's gonna be a mess because they
but
released
like
that
they
feature unfinished. This better at least be done and ready to use. And if
yeah,
it's
but
not,
I'm saying that we don't think that we shouldn't think that it will be, because they said that it's going to take at least another full year before it's fully out. But at least they're working on the same kind of stuff for 3 different systems now. They can like add a contribution method that goes to all 3 corp, freelance, and military campaigns, and they can keep working on that.
Yeah, I think this is 2 decades of trying to improve the new player experience, and with Exordium and the funnels that they're putting in, however they turn out, I feel like this is probably the best shot that the game has had to try and get those new players over that initial, where they drop it because they don't understand it. I've got a really good feeling about this.
I will also say that I think that something that I would normally really not like CCP saying, and we're going to complete this feature over a couple of years. However, what completing it over time will allow them to do is to tweak its direction slightly based on how people use it and the feedback.
Assuming as long as they do tweak it, right, and they don't part release something, go, this didn't work, and we're just going to leave it in a part working state.
Oh, when did that ever happen?
The last feature that I think we haven't talked about yet is the titles and achievements. I think just going over that quickly before we touch the P word would be interesting. I personally think they're neat.
I really wanted that when I was on CSM. I think
like
there's people like in WoW who will complete every single one.
Yep. I think it's good. Like, I don't see a reason not to have them, even if they're cheesable. They're cheesable in all games, and
I think it's sort of why not? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
How many pilots are you going to cheese them on? Good luck.
I do wonder.
Right, have fun.
I wonder how much of a skill point inflation we'll get. Like, are there going to be like 20 million skill points to get out of the achievement system, or are we looking at like?
Is there SP at all?
Like, yeah, you get 100,000 for losing 5 ships and stuff like that. So like, there's a lot of like people are going to log on all their alts and kill each other.
I didn't know that. That's really big. That basically is a way of getting a method of gaining SP actively by playing the game.
A la the dailies and things like this. That's all to the good, right? Absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? If they if they could find 5 other ways of adding SP for people who are under 200 million that aren't an injector, right? That are sort of time gated. Oh my heck!
This is good. I really like this now.
My 1
100%.
personal worry, and this is like not like a system critique, but like I like multi-boxing and I do different things on different characters, and like my main is just not going to get the achievements from what my alts do, I suspect, and then it's going to feel a little bit hollow.
I mean, you can
in some ways.
But that's just that's achievements in all games, is it not? Like you gotta
go. No, I like a lot of games let you link your account so that you get all your achievements on like whatever character you want to be on.
Definitely, Daddy WoW has done that for a good long time now, of course, and Eve is just not close to that. But that's just the way it is, right? We have alts; everyone does it. It's about how much SP you want to farm on any individual pilot, right? Good luck.
Yeah, I do like that. There's like an active way though. That is cool.
All right then, guys. I'm going to repeat the words used on stage, almost as if it was a throwaway. Almost as if it was a throwaway. Almost as if taking a piece of paper out of his pocket, reading it out, and then saying, "Right, back to what I really wanted to talk about." But we did have the words.
God, you must have such large post-it notes.
Coming in September. Blah blah.
Who was it
blah,
that actually said this? Because I didn't actually see them say this.
It
was during. It was during the main keynote, I want to say.
Yeah, it was.
It was right.
I saw Jotun's summary, but I didn't see
and
the.
What's more,
and hello everyone. By the way.
What's more, on stage he specifically said, it's not going to be something other than fatigue coming to Ansiblex in September.
And we did have Jotun's message in the session.
Yeah, Jotun's message is the
which
next
I'll put
one,
on screen.
Yeah.
This is what started the fires everywhere on r/Eve. Goons burning their keyboards in unison.
For context, this is what the gameplay team told the community devs to tell players.
Yeah, that was
this is like the official line.
Right.
Now,
was there anything else announced during the expansion keynote
about this?
About this? Not anything
else. This single few lines on stage and this single post is the full information from CCP about it.
Which I'm not sure if that was a golden play by FC not to mention it, or a missed thing because they knew what the community response was going to be, right?
The community team was told to say, hey, there's going to be more details tomorrow, and then there weren't any more details, so that's the thing.
That's never happened before.
But it's not a big deal. We can wait till September, right?
Well, we can also, we would say it's for strong clues rather than, canon as to exactly how it's going to work. But we can look at the document that was worked on by multiple members of the CSM and signed by scores of people in fairly powerful positions in various alliances and corporations, and also signed by small groups as well, for the entirety of what has been proposed.
But with some glaring absences.
My favorite signature was the high-tech war deckers, right? That's black.
Yeah, that was really funny right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's some signatures on there which is like, and your view has weight in this topic. How?
I enjoyed 3 betters, pilots, none.
What they want. So if you can't have an alt alliance like a lot of people, like Brave does, then everyone has to pile into the main alliance to use the Ansiblexes and nullsec. And so, of course, they can constantly, as we're experiencing right now, they can constantly war deck because they flip alliances. No problem. Yes, they want more people to kill in high sec. That's why.
I mean, I don't want to get... There's the hard and the soft version of this, right? As written in the quote, right? The hard version is that your fatigue varies based on the distance of the jump bridge from your capital, right? And the soft version is it varies with the distance of that jump bridge from the capital of the owning alliance, right? That anybody can, like a local jump bridge, I can use a local jump bridge no matter who it belongs to if I'm on their ACL. My fatigue the fatigue is the same for everybody, and it varies with how big their space is, right? So the farther I want to make my network, the more problematic it is. But locating 2 small networks next to each other would essentially not be a problem, right? But the hard version is very, very impactful potentially on anyone who's blue to anyone else. So we will see how they go after that implementation, if in fact that is the implementation.
I mean, the soft version, as you propose it, is basically pointless because it'll just lead to what is effectively anti-white-hunting of just breaking out into lots of small alliances.
Do you?
So that would be.
I'm not convinced of that, as a matter
pointless.
of fact, because that has a ton of like Aegis impacts and membership is hard, right?
I think we break it into the smallest reasonable sized.
It's not quite as simple as in the actually I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to do one where the progenitor of this proposal came from a little bit, just because I've had a lot of grumpy messages over the last 24 hours. To be clear, the proposal document is not my document. The progenitor concept came originally from, I want to say CSM 17 conversations, then 18, then 19,
Sure,
which
yeah,
was
I agree with that.
which was, you know, the world arguing for fatigue in jump bridges across all of the space, which meant nullsec groups that invest in their infrastructure basically got bent over and screwed, even by having their own local networks. The local network element comes out of it.
Can you expand upon that part? Can you expand
Yeah,
upon
so the point is,
Screwed
obviously, jump bridges, you know, if you put down jump bridges, you invest in that infrastructure, you have to fuel them, you have to maintain them, you have to anchor them, you know, you need to put in the upgrades, so on and so forth. So if you just go straight fatigue across everything, well, yeah, okay, there's some point of it, but it becomes really pointless. I might as well just use Titan to bridge everywhere at that point, right? Because I'm getting fatigue regardless. So the step on from that, which was the local network, let's call it, just for sake of argument, is to go, well, okay, if we assume there has to be something and everybody's chomping at fatigue because that's the sledgehammer that everybody's always going to reach for, then there should be an area of space to be determined what that radius is, where actually you don't get fatigue. That's the benefit of holding SOV. It's the benefit of managing that infrastructure, is that your local space and all your crowds in your local space don't burn fatigue by just having access to the things that SOV give them access to. That was the kind of core. Jinx, Dujek, Kaz, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was kind of like the core parts of these conversations. Is the space is still your space and you should get benefits from it. Long range projection,
Yeah, right.
okay, we can have a debate about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. For example, they could have done other stuff. Earlier, a few weeks ago, there was a version of this document that circulated, trying to turn it into a more public manifesto, and that got leaked to, I think, Redline. I can't remember exactly, but late in that process, something that got added to that document very late was the idea that people should only be able to use the Ansiblex of their alliance, that you should do away with ACLs entirely. Something like that would be just freaking terrible.
Yeah,
right? I mean,
no, I agree. Yeah,
it does not work, right? So they could have thought about other stuff, and the reason fatigue is coming up is because it's more or less the only way anyone can think of to have a variance in what is done and how this is addressed. Right, nullsec really has always been tuned around, like jump bridges come out super early, 2005, 2006. Nullsec is way more impassable than most other space. It has far more systems. The jump ranges can be fine, but can be awful. Right, there's all this weird shit. Right, that's what we mean when we say it's tuned around jump bridges. Nevertheless, they are quite powerful. In a universe with essentially free ACLs. You don't have to share passwords. You don't have to do any of that stuff. And with capitals having hardcore fatigue. But like, it's important to remember that we had a few years of jump bridges with fatigue. Everybody hated how awful it was just to try and live in nullsec in that era, and how awful it made it. They didn't mean that. Well understood. Tons of people talk about hating it, right?
I mean, no, Kaz, I will say, surprise, people who relied on fast travel all over multiple regions didn't like it when that was taken away from them. But what it did do is, what it did do by having fatigue on ye olde jump bridges was allow people to raid through those areas and encourage the large owning entities to have to spread their forces out if they wanted rapid response to all areas of those systems.
And that's,
I mean, back then we dealt with, well, first you could have two in a system. They took that away now, but we use shuttles. I mean, we would stage ships far, and you would ping. You had to ping earlier, of course, and you would shuttle over there and you'd ship up, and people were fine. What I've said is I don't know why they took off fatigue in the first place, but for me, I think. What I worry about here, and maybe if I'm hijacking that conversation, I'm sorry.
No,
what I worry about is you see a lot of, so we were like B2, we were Brave and Blob. If you have two allies next to each other, if you say you can't use the alliance or it's like heavily penalized, now neighbors will be very hard to work together. And with the consolidation, and I know Brave is involved in that too, the consolidation we see in nullsec, if you can't have allies, then it's going to almost force mergers of groups. And I think we've seen a ton of that over time, and I'm worried that it could go in that direction. Is
You say mergers of groups, but when you pile more people into a smaller space, so that they can pull together for defense, in the same reason that is causing you to not be blue with somebody further away is the same reason that this larger group in one place isn't going to be able to have as much effect further away. So it's kind of a self-balancing thing.
I'm going to completely hijack the conversation here because I feel like this is an important thing to bring up. What problem are we trying to solve with fatigue on Ansiblexes?
So I can jump into the
large scale projection is the core issue that is to some degree hurting nullsec space. The ability for initiative in the east or in the west to make it all the way to the east, or goons in the east to make it all the way to the west, or the southwest, for example. The ability for Frat to go from the far west of their territory to be in the far east of their territory in as little as 5 or 10 jumps.
I mean, when we were fighting Frat, for an older example, basically Norris and Gobbins would threaten us with turning the Ansiblexes in for Winterco green to PanFam anytime we did anything that they deemed off their rules. And so they would just throw an ACL on, and then PanFam could be there in 12 jumps. So I've suffered the projection as well.
I'm just going to add an extra phrase to what Billy said, because it's large scale, long range projection. I think the long range is the critical point there.
And that's
so here's the question. So is the fatigue? So you said a lot of things, and I'm gonna take off the last part where you said in 5 to 10 jumps. Is the fatigue gonna stop people from harassing you though? Like, it's not gonna stop them from going to areas of space. Like, they're still gonna
well, it will in fact stop people from going. Like, people that were staging, for example, in the west of fraternity space would not be able to make it to the east of fraternity space within any new amount of jump fatigue rules. We're in a situation where we'd be usually going through anywhere from 5 to 8 jump bridges, along that path from the west to the east, right? So, if your maximum is 3, then that caps out at about 15 light years in terms of movement. And obviously you can, ninja some regionals or use a Titan to save some, make it more efficient. But all of these things are planning, and they remove the ability to easily do this.
Fraternity's kind of the extreme example, right? They have basically the longest available space in the game. It's the most line-like, even though I guess
it's a line, yeah. It's
right, yeah. So they've got problems in this sense, yeah.
Well, I don't even know if that's true though, because when you look at it, the Imperium is able to go all the way from the far west of Catch all the way to the far east of Cache, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we go all the way to period bases.
But I think the distinction.
Okay, sorry. So from period bases all the way into the drones, actually, yeah, right. So it's even further.
Here though is if you look at like Veil, Tribute, Gemini, and all the rest of it, it's effectively like a T split with Venal, whereas it's not regions that are northeast, south, and west of each other. It's like a line, so it's probably the widest light year range to cross, compared to like the Goon setup, which is quite wide in all directions, but it means you've got better coverage in each direction, I guess, if you think of things as a bubble.
I would argue that if we're talking from period bases all the way to Cache, then it's actually significantly wider.
The longest single line you can draw light year wise across like a single coalition space is currently Goons.
That's insane.
Yeah,
all right,
sure.
so I'm going to jump back in. I'm going to jump right back in because we've talked about the problem. The problem has been talked about at length for years at this point. So now we've got a solution that has been proposed for years at this point as well. What does the future look like after this is implemented? So, like, what does Brave do next now that you're clumped up next to Goons?
Can I take this one?
If you want.
Yeah, I think my take is that not a lot ultimately changes at first. It probably, and I got quoted on Reddit saying this, right, but I think there's just not enough motivation for people to go and try and take these border constellations, even though it is now hypothetically going to be harder for the Imperium to respond from CTAC-J all the way in, let's say, Ketch or Esoteria or period basis that are all quite far away, right?
This isn't really just about people being able to take space that you can no longer reach as fast. It's about you not interfering in things a long way away just because you can get there quickly.
You can't join a fight. And this is what happened in the North too. Like, it now takes an hour to get to the fight, so you would have to pre-ping. You'd have to get people loaded up, and instead of saying, "Oh, let's go," that's with Ansiblex, take 8 and you're there in 10 minutes.
I'll stipulate that, right? I can agree that some other people's content might be air quotes healthier for some definition of healthy because other larger groups can't show up and air quotes third party them. Fine. But I do not like being told that the nullsec ecosystem will be healthier or that this will somehow promote small groups engaging in nullsec where they have not before. That is not going to happen. That requires a totally different approach.
I don't necessarily think that this change directly will. However, I do think that it's one of the required steps to get to a nullsec ecosystem that potentially might. I think,
so
like,
to be clear,
one of my big issues.
The goal with this proposal in general is to keep nullsecers out of other people's fights. And,
none of this is definable as a single cause, a single issue.
Yeah,
I'm just looking to try to find one identifiable issue that is going to be fixed by this.
Can I jump in on
Did
this
I
one?
not give you an identifiable issue, the power projection,
I mean,
or did you?
You did. You gave me the problem.
At which nullsec.
Okay, so.
But you didn't actually justify it at all, Billy.
That's the
you
problem.
Didn't say why this is.
Stop getting why is it a problem? It's a problem because it encourages organizations to group further and further together, because the localization of content is further and further minimized.
You have
I guess
so much accessible area from a single system in a reasonable amount of time.
Generally, the best way to hold space is to have your core as safe as humanly possible, and then to have the edges be, your content area.
Sure. No, I'm not denying any of this, to be clear. Okay, work with me though. So this
we're talking
mechanic
the red line.
promotes super big groups, right?
It encourages clumping, yes.
Yeah, right, okay. My argument is as follows. 1, tons of mechanics in the game, primarily crabbing, do this. Okay.
100%.
That is why we are at where we are at. So my question then is it right if you have these huge groups and you want to deal with them somehow, is it right to A, try to do something to hurt them, or B, try to do something to help a smaller group grow, help some other group grow instead? And which category does this nerf fall into? My answer is it falls into the first category. You're just hurting the big groups, which, okay, we're going to get nerfed. Fine. But it's not actually going to help a new thing grow at all.
Real quick.
So I would agree that it is going to. I would agree it is going to be a hurt more than a help patch. However, I think that hurt will force contractions in space size, which will inevitably, not like in a short term, in the long term, open up room for these small groups to make plays, do things, etc.
I think
also
it's a step in that direction, right? I think it, and Kaz, I know this is part of some of your big thing. I think it's a step in a direction. I think what this enables is the edges to be nibbled at, right? Because they're just too far away to bother with, unless you want to go and deploy. But if you go and deploy, another edge is potentially exposed, and it can be nibbled at, and now
it's real. It's absolutely a real mechanic.
The two missing bricks in my point is I don't think it'll make space contract and it'll upset a lot of people because Equinox doesn't really allow growing tall. That's a different problem. We can come back to that in a minute. I think that's a balancing issue with Equinox solve. I think the other problem though is for those small groups to want to nibble at the edge of the region, and they know they're going to get deployed on at some point if you're in a point of relative peace, the space isn't going to be valuable fast enough to be worth nibbling on. I think that's the second problem, right? That's that kind of whole raider conquest kind of side stuff. Kaz, I know you want to wax lyrical on that point, but I think that's a missing part, right? But it's a step towards it.
I want to add a thing here. So one of the other things about the whole big projection discussion is like I personally think the community has gotten a little bit fixated on this, and one of my reasons why I'm happy that this is like something is happening here is so that we can also get to the next part of the discussion.
Yeah.
We need to say like projection has like we're looking at projection, something is happening. Can we also like find out what other things we want? What we want to put into the next nullsec patch.
I think that's a really good point.
Good things for small
It also
groups.
gives us, I think that's a really good point, because then that we can finally start having chats about things like citadels or solve mechanics or you know, a number of other things that are also in worse or terrible places. But I think you're 100% right. The community has hyper fixated on projection as the sole problem in EVE, when it's like one factor in 10 that is.
So to center myself on everything that we're talking about, just to put myself on the same page with everybody, because like I said, I've been looking for the problem to solve what it looks like when it's solved. This isn't one of those things. This is something where this is just an overpowered feature that needs to be nerfed, and we're doing it and hoping that that's going to put us on a path to making other changes that will actually fix the problems that we need to fix. Correct?
Groups are going to play optimally, and that optimal is impacted and driven by the rules of the sandbox. And so changing the rules of that sandbox will lead to a new state of optimal play in nullsec, and hopefully changing this rule will lead to a air quotes healthier nullsec ecosystem.
There's sort of three scenarios, right? Scenario one is we try and defend all of our, more people are motivated to come after our borders. We try and defend them all equally, exhaust ourselves, morale is bad, shit starts to fall apart, right? We're stupid for doing that, right? That's scenario one. Scenario two is we are not that stupid. We floodplains a couple of the regions and take them back and forth and deploy and do this stuff. That's sucky for the people who lived there, but that's what does not allow the group who took them from us to grow, even if they're temporarily successful. And scenario three, which everyone is sort of hoping for, is that we strategically analyze scenarios 1 and 2 and say, we don't want to do either of those, fuck this, and give up some regions, and then new growth can just happily live there without us aggressing them. You can go ahead and pray, right? So I see what they're hoping for. But
I would use there's an interesting example, right? Like, so we had only fleets, you know, who kind of started taking space in Aquarius, and we had who was the Russian coalition that was in there with them as well?
XIX.
Like
not XIX, but
Bring My Drake and Synergy of Steel.
Yeah. Like that crew, like, and they were there, and they were living a happy life in Aquarius, and one day they poked the bear in the wrong way, and boom, 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 the entirety of the Imperium and the entirety of Initiative came down the jump bridge chains and just obliterated them, right? And obviously that is something they could do for a one-time event regardless of jump bridges, but the ability and the clarity of the situation where it's like, you guys live at our pleasure and we can come and destroy you at any time with little to no effort, you know. I think it was no more than a 20 or 30 minute visit for them. It's something that, you know, people understand very clearly, right? That, you know, the big boys will come as soon as they want, right? And you have to. I agree 100% about your take on the floodplains, but the problem is that the floodplains are extending out in some cases 5, 6, 7 regions away from the core versus 1 or 2 regions.
It's real, right? But so what I want to get to is, like, I've been preparing for these events naturally because I have prophetic insight, and I looked at the drone regions, which we did pull back, right? Imagine that this goes off, except there is no drone regions. We took and met-noxed all 8 drone regions, and we've been doing that for 6 months. And now the nerf goes off, and we say, fuck that, we'll give it up, right? In the drone regions, the MER sucks ass. They are doing the worst. And furthermore, I want to myth bust, actually. Now's the time. It has sort of become a myth that Equinox does not allow, growing vertically. Because what happened
they have
after
been
the release
thunderdoming in there since the pullout.
Yeah, well, and so that will come to
that
that, right?
impact its economic viability.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, with the drone regions, there's no way to live in the drone regions if you don't control that singular core entrance, and goons control it. So there's no way for any group to ever expand and live in there, right? Unless they're doing so.
Very artificial, and people know that, meaning that like the vibes are off, for lack of a better term. I was gonna say though, real quick to hop in.
But they have allies. Yeah,
I think
they have allies in there, and it's gonna break if the alliance if you can't use other alliances, they're going to be forced to all join one alliance. And that's what I'm worried. I think we should do the projection and not the alliance thing.
People won't do that though. Like if
They're
you're
not
going to
gonna-
be
they're not gonna
forcing
do that.
people
They've
into
got
the
their
same
own
alliance,
identities.
then
Yeah.
they'll just leave the coalition. Simple as that.
Right.
I was gonna say, though,
my
I think
point
one
that
of
I'm
the-
trying to make is just that it's really bad, right? Like, so in Smother, if you work out the relative productivity of the regions versus their equinox resources on paper, I did this just very crudely. In Smother's at something like 2.4, and I forget even the metric. It's like ISK per month of ratting and mining per converted workforce or something like this. It's 6 times the amount of any of the drone regions. Right, it's only maybe 2.5 times one of the crappier regions that only some normal crabs live in. So there's this wide spread, and the catch up is just not happening. And that's why for years I've been focused on this income topic around passive income and what you get just as the intrinsic value for holding a SOV system. There are other topics like how to make SOV easier to take, right, so that a small group does not have to put up this big logistics effort to take it and does not have to engage with ADMs necessarily, right? So I desperately hope we can get to some of that stuff if doing the projection nerf means that it's off people's minds, right? Goons do not want to sit here and stake out and say, we don't think this should happen at all, we're going to riot over it. But very clearly, my name is not on the list. I don't think it's all that's needed. I think it sort of is almost a distraction, even though
well, hold on. Let me say something for a second, Kaz. A lot of things that you say in these arguments, you say one thing, which is potentially hugely subjective, and right now you're still on this idea that people are proposing that this Ansiblex change, they think the people proposing it think it's going to solve all of Eve's problems and all of the SOB problems. Nobody at any point is saying that about it, and people are getting ready to go to move on to some of the next things.
Definitely
As is read on the show,
Sure,
it was talking up yesterday about how it'll be such a much healthier NullSec ecosystem, and they're going to see and blah 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 blah. Right? That is not really true.
Where
Can I speak? Can I speak? I've been sat here listening. I kind of agree with Kaz. I think it is the first step. I don't think it's going to be a mythical new dawn. September comes around, everything's suddenly going to change. I think number one, it will take a lot of time. I think it'll take at least 6 months to show any sort of fruition. I think perception is half the battle, as you guys were saying about how it would still technically be possible for goons to go halfway across the map and stomp someone with fatigue. But I think the perception of the victim in that scenario is what sort of empowers them to take space. At the moment, if you think, I'm going to go and take Paragon Soul from Sigma or whoever the fuck lives there, you realize before you even do it that it's a futile task because you're not going to win, right? It's not going to happen. Whereas I think after the change, the perception is going to be much more favorable to the possibility of actually trying to do that and put up some sort of fight and pose a threat without getting the force of the block dumped upon you.
Yeah, I was going
to go back to what Redline was saying about what comes next, and this might sound actually crazy coming from me. This is going to be a total. You're not going to expect what I'm about to say. I think NullSec needs buffs. I think NullSec should have more small-scale objectives to actually contest, more carrot to actually go out and spread across the whole of space, not generated from ADMs or SOB hubs or any of that bullshit. Actual small sites, small medium-scale sites that people actually contest locally to get people living locally.
Clip that right now. Save it
I
forever.
was going to say though, I think one of the big things that's also kind of being overlooked, Kaz, by your 3 points, was that like currently when you're fighting in NullSec as a smaller group, it's even if you poke at the edges of the empires, you get a response from Goon Core. Like an example that I bring up pretty often is when we whale in Sigma Space in Omist, there have been 2 times where I've gotten a Rourke into panic and goons show up in F&Is before the Rourke is out of panic. Like stuff like that.
I love working here. Holy shit, what a great start. I'm going to tell that on the fireside. Clip that.
So that's also because
like Llama will show up in F&Is before the Rourke is out of panic. Or like in it will form a fleet and get into Eagles and get there.
We worked hard on this, by the way.
Like,
right?
and,
What
and
we are
it is on some levels it is very impressive, right? But like
umbrellas are cool. Like, don't get me wrong, they are the mechanics CCP gave us,
of
and they're
that
using
many
them correctly.
players is really, really cool, and like the speed at which these groups can like form up and respond to threats is interesting from like a pure mechanical point of view. But when you're fighting Sigma grind set and Omist,
I want to fight Sigma, Grindset, and Omist. I don't want to fight Goons and CTEC-J.
Let me, and I appreciate that, right? What we are begging for, right? What I tried to stake my CSM time on, and what in part led to Equinox in a way that is unfinished, right? They didn't seal the deal with this. What we need is that for us to be exhausted, right? For it to be meaningful every time we take the whole block to crush someone, right? If 𝗨𝗡 is taking those FNIs out, he should be sacrificing any of a half a dozen other things that possibly he could be doing, because every one of the edges of our 16 regions is active with some incursion, because why wouldn't it be? It's extremely profitable if someone manages to take just one system from us, or just one constellation, right? It should go quick, right? If we can't take that thing back in maybe 3 days, they should be on positive ROI. That is the sort of mechanic that we used to have in Moons, right? In Past Moons, that you have back in a way in Metnox, but they need to go all the way, right? It has to be the whole SOV system. They have to say you don't have to engage with ADMs. ADMs are great for us. We'll crab that shit. But for you have enough people. Sorry, go on.
No, don't. Sorry, you're gonna go after I do. I just wanted to ask you, because so in the Dronelands right now, do you think that they are making enough to survive as the alliances the size that they are?
They're lower, a lot more money than we were making in LoSec.
Not by much. They're lower than anybody on the metric that I put together of per your Equinox resources.
They're actively fighting. Like Big Eb was.
It's important to remember the drone regions are effectively undeveloped. They have no keeps, limited SOTOs.
That's our point.
The region itself is basically never going to get fully developed. So
that's
using the drones
problem.
That's the problem.
They should still be making money depending on who controls how
but
much.
But they are
at
making
any
money.
Time.
But they're making money that is relative to the level of investment in the regions.
And that's bad. That's bad, right? It's
because
bad
they
that
should
that's
spend
the
more time
only
focusing
mechanic.
on fighting.
Right, that mechanic is good for me, right? And if you only have that mechanic, then the universe will continue to be dominated by me and mine, right? That's what we're telling you. You have to invert it. You have to go all the way to where someone does not need any crabs to own a SOV system. That doesn't undermine us. It has to exist in parallel to what is current, right? They have to be in tension, because that's what's undermining them. If they get to fight over it and make some default amount of money, I don't know what that is. Maybe it's 40%. Maybe it's 20%. Metnox is 40, right?
Check it out.
Then they are making money. It's 30 trillion ISK a month, dudes. That's what is missing from the economy, and that's why no one can catch up. Thank you. Rant over.
So what about this? What if, so you look at how much money people in the Dronelands are making. What if that was just the base that you earned for owning SOV, owning that much space? You just got that much money. It's negligible for a big group like Goons, but it could mean everything to a small group.
I can give you numbers, right? Like if you take Insmother as the 2.4 as my baseline, the drone regions are all down around like 0.3 to 0.5, right? That's like 10 to 20%. Metnox amount, 40% would be at 1 million, right? 1 out of 2.4. That's an average, like far-flung Empyrean region or far-flung FRT region is right around 1 million, right? And there's the gap, right? That they're only getting that 10 to 20%, and for it to work, you need the Metnox level of 40. It worked for LoSec, but they need all of SOV. That's why if you look at the map and all the regions that are undercounted, that are under that 40%, you get 30 trillion ISK a month.
It's very easy.
I do think as well, like, if these ANSI changes do come in, and it is like, I mean, like you're saying, I think it will let us kind of start having these conversations again. And I do fully believe, though, the one thing that I do disagree with you on is I think these are kind of prerequisite changes to starting a conversation like that. Because if you don't have this, like, cost of projecting really far and like fast, like the amount of space left in the game is really, really small for even like that's outside of like
for anyone to even start, or it feels
for anyone to even start that, right?
I think it feels that way. I think it's the important point, right? Like I think when
I was going to say as well, like
when the conversations went on 17, 18, 19, There were whole conversation about solve and solve mechanics and all the rest of it, as you can imagine. Something
but it
has
feels
to be pulled off
pointless.
first. Now, for my mind, this felt like the thing that generates a bit more like, oh, there's a null dream that some group could have by putting this as a
And I think it
foundation.
has
step.
positive
But
secondary.
you could have picked one of the numerous changes that would be needed to happen, right?
Yeah.
As that first step.
I really want to get to what Hirebrand said in the chat. He talked about, like, doesn't this encourage building wide, right? That any given system would be worth about as much as any given system, right? And for people without crabs, that is approximately correct. This is what Equinox gives you, is a map of that, right? That each system does vary.
I don't think
right?
that's
But
a bad thing.
It's
You
not.
have to
It's
push
the
the pull.
it is the key thing, right? That's how Bob and PL operated. Is they just went and took as much as they could, and you had to push back on them, and it was worth doing, right? Because you didn't cap out the number of crabs. It is essential for that to
And with the
exist.
projection changes, you get that push and the pull where people overexpand, and you can actually take some of that space. And
it's
I think
meaningful,
it gives,
even if it only is 3 days of time.
And to be clear, this goes all the way back to a CSM proposal I put in about a decade now, I guess, which was literally like, if you own the TCU, you get paid a daily stipend or something.
Yeah.
And
I was
like,
gonna say
because
as well,
if you remember, people used to just throw away TCUs, right? At
I don't
100
think
mil, it's
that
like,
it
here,
should
you get money for
necessarily
it.
be raw ISK, though I don't have the numbers on how much of the ISK generated in game goes into like alliance wallets. For
Probably
example.
not, right? They can do a lot of
So-
different stuff now that they have
Yeah,
the
yeah.
skyhooks,
Like,
and they have
I think-
Metnox, and they
I'm gonna
have South
hijack.
Box.
I think
I'm gonna
overall I
hijack
do
it for
agree
a
with
second.
that.
I gotta hijack it for a second because Asmo Games in the chat makes an excellent point. It says none of what we just talked about has anything to do with Ansiblexes, and that is
Yes,
the
it
core
does.
of the
Absolutely it
problem.
does.
It does.
So,
No,
hold on, wait, hold
It's an
on.
interconnected
Hold on
system.
one second.
Yeah.
We can only talk one at a time, gang. So listen,
Well-
here's the thing with that is that it doesn't have anything to do with Ansiblexes. Ansiblexes
It has
will
everything
make
to do
it easier for it to be accomplished, but
Yeah,
that
but
is
like what
not
Asmo,
that
what
is
Asmo was missing
that is a
here
problem that we as nullsecers see, is that people don't want our space because that means we don't even want our space. That's the problem that
So
we
it- but
see
first of all,
in the
right.
game.
First of all, this is interconnected. I mean, Ansiplexes, it's not interconnected with. Mobility and projection, it is connected with.
I
right?
understand,
Ansiplexes are a form of
but I
it, drifters are a
think
form of it, filaments are a form of
could
it,
have had a
death bombs are a
reverse.
form of it, so on and so forth.
Where they make nullsec desirable first, and then they cut off reinforcement.
Yeah, but
routes
the-
second.
that is that's
Sorry, let Luke
desirable.
talk. Let Luke talk. Let Luke go. I interrupted him.
The point is the ability to rapidly project across space. Regardless, if you fix everything else and you make space super valuable and all the rest of it, it doesn't change the status quo because we can still come and stomp on you from 10 regions away. So
Right.
it is interconnected with the problem.
Prove it though. That's the thing, because I don't think that
So why
Goons have
do you want to
16
take space
regions
now?
of space, right? Goons have 16 regions of space, and like Kazanir was saying, that he'd expect an incursion on the edge of every single one of them. There is no feasible way that an alliance right now, with the current projection mechanics, could defend against an incursion at the edge of 16
They easily
regions.
can. That's why they have 16 regions
No
of
way!
space.
Yeah,
Well,
the
who
the
do
big
you
group can
think
form
are these 16 groups? that
6,000
can do?
players for a single fight. They can form 10, like that's an absurd number, like, of pilots compared to the rest of the active PvP population.
The problem is it's
in
a
the game.
combination of factors, right? So like if you're attacked in, In's mother and like first off, you need somewhere to stage these attacks from, and because the groups are so wide, they effectively only have very limited actual weak edges. But the bigger issue is that they can literally just project out to when they need to project, and they let a initial reinforce happens, but they know when the actual timer will be, and they'll be there with 300 dudes, and like everybody knows they're not going to contest 300
And they
dudes,
can
so they
form
don't.
multiple 300 dude fleets at the same time with the same number of support, like that any other individual group trying to contest their edges can.
So then
with
how
no
did
like
the staging
logistical
Keepstar and Fortech H get reinforced then?
because it was
Initiative?
fit like shit, and it was meme headshot because the size of the groups in nullsec are so
What
large
was the
at
first thing
moment
that you said?
that it was shit like fit. It was fit like shit.
Well, why does that matter?
Fitting
on a
didn't affect
shield
it
ref?
getting reinforced the first time. It got reinforced the first time because Fraternity had 6,000 people in OTAC V killing another Keepstar.
But I was just told that we could defend 16 regions at once. Why weren't there
Well, yeah, you
immediately
can when
300 people
It's not
on
singular
that
objectives.
Keepstar defending?
No,
it?
stop. Listen, stop.
Peer to peer.
Yeah, you're talking about a peer-to-peer war versus like, a an asymmetrical warfare situation. They are very
I'm just
different.
saying.
And you're also talking
Also,
about a peer-to-peer
like-
war when there's 2 large groups versus 1 large group.
Yeah, to go back to Asmo's point, like one faction is saying, hey, we need this general problem of smaller groups also not having space to exist to be fixed by doing Ansiblexes first, and other groups are saying smaller groups would be able to do better if having a little bit of SOV gave more bigger and immediate benefits. And then Asmo came in and said, the argument that benefits are good has nothing to do with Ansiblexes. Yes, it's a different solution that has to work together with Ansiblexes to create a better environment through many solutions that work together. And it's like the opposite faction who think that, in a sense, that should be fixed first. Nobody was
the
arguing that
argument is more
if
simple.
you... Yeah,
It's
if
way
you,
more simple
if you
than that.
nerf Ansiblexes, then everyone will be rich. That is like a disconnect. Like nobody has been arguing that. Anyway.
So here's the thing though, is that is not really the argument. So the people that have been largely asking for Ansiblex fatigue are not the people that live in nullsec space. But
No, stop. You
we
need to
in
shut the
nullsec
like.
space-
Listen, you
Let me
keep one
finish.
guy.
Let me
This
finish.
ludicrous argument, Redline.
Redline, you
But
keep
I'm
coming
saying
up
that
with
the
like
people
the
in-
reasonable people will tell you the argument. Then you'll be like, but this one guy said, and then you'll be like, yeah,
Does
he did.
need to
But
shit
that,
on you guys like Mitani did the one year for you to let him fucking finish? My God, Redline, please go ahead. This is absurd.
No. Because this argument that Redline is presenting is one of the
I didn't even
thickest
present the whole
arguments.
argument.
You started by saying
You've made it
this
4
is about-
times.
This is about
Let him get the
people.
argument.
Oh yeah, but the people who are campaigning for this don't even live in nullsec.
They don't.
As the implication that you are putting
Do I
through
need to
there
look at the proposal?
is that somehow nullsec does not affect in any manner the rest of EVE Online, and it's not true.
That is not.
I mean,
Do you
I
have
think
any
Redline,
opinions on
Redline
popular
is.
income?
I can't believe I walked away from that. Redline is obviously correct, and everybody's strawmanning him. All his point was that currently the multiple timer effect is extremely operative. Yes, that happened in a peer-to-peer war, but there's no reason, given the right conditions, that it couldn't happen. And you would easily see that in spite of projection, the number of people is limited. They do have to travel, and they can only be in a single place at the same time. And if they get fucked off into tie-dye in any fashion, that makes it worse, right? These principles are already operative. That's why a projection nerf is impactful. We're not saying it won't be, right? But these things were already on the table. So then it follows to ask the question, why were smaller groups not taking advantage of those things already? And the answer lies, like I was saying, in the drone regions, because it's just not worth it to try, even if you can win for a few days or weeks, which some people can.
I would
I think
argue
it's- I
that's
mean, that's
not
only
correct. When you
partially
look at the
true.
one situation we're talking about a war between the largest block versus the second largest block, with the third largest block, attacking from the rear. Like that is not a situation that is
The other
relevant
thing that I want to add in
this
is that,
discussion
like,
about asymmetrical warfare in small groups.
the distance that it took to start feeling the effects of like needing to stage beforehand and stuff, that's all the way across the entire galaxy. What hopefully these changes will do is shrink the range at which it really starts to become hard to project far.
I definitely.
If you were asking allies to come 5 jump bridges, last year to come help you out with the fleet, that's not a big deal. But if you're asking them to come 5 jump bridges after this change, that is going to be a huge deal. And maybe they need to jump clone to help you, or they have to form an hour in advance.
We don't have
if
those
mechanics are
numbers. We
roughly-
don't know how big of a deal this is going to be, is the thing. We have no details other than a general idea of how it's going to work.
If
For a
we
lot
assume
of
it's
these
even
small
remotely
groups-
close to what has been proposed, it will mean that would be 3 jump bridges and like 20 jumps and possibly 40 or 50 jumps on the way back, which is a massive difference compared to 5 or 6 jump bridges up and 5 or 6 jump bridges down.
I might add in as well, a jump bridge gate route is very, very different than just a gate to gate route, considering the fact that there are +2 AU warp speed upgrades in basically most of the space
of these large blocks, plus combined with the fact that the average warp distance between a gate and an ANSI is much, much smaller than the average warp distance between a gate and a gate. So all of this would combine together to mean that the travel times are much, much, much longer if you just have to.
And the big thing that we're not talking about is the ability to interdict too, right? If you're going 50 jumps, all of a sudden a dictor or two means that's going to take you hours
A
sometimes.
lot longer. Yeah.
You know, versus like, oh, you know, there's a jump bridge on the jump gate. You boosh
we
off
get
the
dragged
bubble, you jump through, you know, you move on with life.
I mean,
it's not
that is
bad,
why we got the capability for dictors to be able to bubble Ansiblex gates.
It doesn't stop them, right? You just you boost them, you bomb the bubble, like.
And also, once you get through the NC, they can't follow you because you're now like.
And the dictor usually dies on his, you know, bubble attempt
because he can't jump through the gate.
Yeah, the dictor can't follow us because he's dead anyways, my friend. These
but when they're using, when they're taking gates, the dictor does live.
You do have
the
actual
dictor lives
concrete
basically
evidence
forever.
to provide,
The
correct?
dictor lives on actual gates. You just you bubble and crash the gate.
And then get killed on the other side.
No,
because
you
you
don't.
bubble and crash the gate again. You have
okay.
obviously not tried to stop.
I've bubbled a 250 man
very
for
hard.
half an hour.
So
there are
so
many
wait a second.
videos.
So what you're telling me is that it's ridiculously easy to waterboard fleets, but people do it on Ansiblex gates?
You've got to think different here, though. If you're
core
not on
of
the
waterboarding is that you can just crash the gate. You can't do that on an ANSI, is what we're saying, Redline.
Oh, I get it now.
It's much, much harder to waterboard on an ANSI than it is on a normal gate.
Because you can, because remember,
I think
if you've got to take normal gates, then effectively your dictor is just ahead of the fleet, dropping a bubble on the out gate. Every time you walk through it, you've got to burn out before then aligning off, right? It doesn't.
Whereas
work.
if it's NCs, they have to pre-stage every dictor because they can't just follow you again.
And if the dictor then bubbles the ANSI, then usually the dictor dies, which means that, you know, as soon as you deal with that one bubble, usually you're free from that dictor for a considerable amount of time, even if he's trying to slow you down as much as he can.
That's just being really unfair to Redline, but in fairness to him, he's never had to fight anyone that actually can waterboard because he mostly fights goons. Right. So
fair. That's fair.
I'm not gonna lie, there was some goon pods that did some really good waterboarding during the recent war. I can't remember the names off top.
Kaz, I'm tired of the North. I'm tired of it over here. Get me back into Goonswarm. Let's do this.
Do
not let him in.
The face you made. Oh, the face you made was worth the bit.
He's just gonna go AFK. Do not believe his lords.
My what? My lords?
His word.
Oh.
I've been ignoring a beautiful woman for you ugly nerds actually for far too long, so I'm gonna have to peace out early. It was wonderful to rant, lovely to see you guys. Like I said, and we don't want to like stake our post and say this shouldn't go off. It'll be like horrible. You know, we're ready for any nerf, but we don't think that this is going to do the thing that a lot of people seem to be hoping it will do. So I really hope we can continue to have that conversation. Thank you all.
Kaz, thank you for joining us. It's a good time to mention to people that I'm going to. I mean, obviously, if you have to go, then feel free in this moment, Kaz. But I'm going to go for people's final thoughts before we dim the lights and Redline turns this after our final thoughts into what some people, namely myself, call untethered, where
untethered after dark. That's what I'm going
untethered after dark, yeah, which is where people can obviously feel free to go much more nonsensical if they like and just start swearing at each other and screaming at the top of their voices.
Well,
if they like.
well,
So I'm
not
gonna go
necessarily
around.
that. So just to be clear, after we bring a lot of people in every week that we have the show to talk about a lot of varying things about Eve. And after the show is over, we set in the Discord channel for like an hour and just keep on talking. So might as well just keep the stream live for it, you know?
Yeah, of course. So I'm gonna give you the opportunity because obviously you need to head off. You can give us your final thought first if you like.
Yeah, no, I think I pretty much said it right. What we have been, what I took up as my CSM campaign was to get them to a point where we could really see a restoration of what used to be Goonswarm's enemies when I was playing originally, right? Band of Brothers, their mechanics, PL, their mechanics, but do it all the way this time, right? Bob and PL always relied on renting in their full form, and that's cool. It solved the problem for them, right? It made enemies of us, and all those crabs ended up hating it. So these days it's unpopular, right? And that's the issue: is renting from CCP's perspective, from the game's perspective, is still crabs. You still need crabs to make it run, and ultimately you both will run out of crabs, or they'll reconfigure themselves into something more optimal. And that's all that we're seeing here, super abstractly, is that the people dominating nullsec are the most powerful and capable configurations of giant groups of crabs, because that other set of mechanics that drove Band of Brothers and drove PL, what I call the Protoss mechanics, the counter to our Zerg, have been dead. So this time they need to go all the way. It should be totally legitimate for you to come in and say, I and my 5 closest friends are elite PvP. We're only going to recruit the people we actually think are good at this game. We're going to take as much space as we can. We're going to hold it as long as we can. And that you should be able to do that and actually engage with the SOV contest without having any crabs at all, right? If the game has to provide NPC renters for you, if the game has to add more crap to your skyhooks or produce some other sites or underpants gnomes, I don't know, right? CCP will design something. I'm sure there's a whole set of discussions we could have. But I, as a player group, I have to be able to say, I don't crab in this game and I still want to take SOV. That is really what we want to ask for, even though that's not us, right? We want to be able to fight those guys for decades yet. Bring it on. But CCP needs to help everybody to make that work. So thank you all. I got to run.
Thank
Bye.
you for coming, Kaz. Luke, my question that I think I'm going to give to the rest of us here is, given that I don't think any of us are against the idea that this isn't the solution to all of EVE's problems, what do you think is a likely candidate for the next big thing to be looked at?
I think there's a couple of different options. I mean, Kaz kind of already talked about this. I think, projection changes stop defending far-flung parts of space continuously, right? And that's great. But you still need a reason for people to take the space, right? Like you're not going to have fights over space if nobody actually wants to come and take the space. So I think the space has to be made, I'm going to say valuable. Now, whether that's passively valuable because you're kind of just blitzing the system, you've taken it, you just want to extract the maximum value, you're not going to work it in terms of raising ADMs and all the rest of it. But I think Kaz is right on that point. That I think that has got to be the next iteration to get people to want to come and fight for null space that isn't just these massive blocks. Because we'll establish infrastructure and ADMs and everything else, that's fine. But I do think there are a lot of people that do want to kind of play around in the null sandbox. Like the drones is a really good example of that, right? The number of groups that are kind of flooded into drones. No, James, I'm not, Kaz. We've had this debate a couple of times before. I can see you typing in chat. But I think that value piece has probably got to be the next thing, right?
Okay, cool. Listen, Jinx.
I think Jinx needs to go now after accusing me of being Kaz.
Okay.
Well, it's your name. Your name tag on the stream is
Jinx. What's the next big thing in EVE that needs 7 years of screeching on both sides before CCP does something about it?
Well, one, I don't think anything, including this, should take 7 years of screeching.
Five.
Yeah, I'm a proponent of them just breaking things and us letting us deal with it. If it's too often, it'll be insane. But I was on CSM 3 or 4 years ago, and we were having the same conversations, and that's way too long. So I want them to just do it. If fatigue's the answer, that's great. I'll use my moment to say I think penalizing allies is going to hurt small groups and like the only fleets, the WOMPs, the drone lands. These people people imagine taking small amounts of space. I think it's going to hurt them, and shouldn't be done with the September change. If more change has to happen, it's an escalation step that I think is easy. I think they're going to do too much in September if they do both. That's where I'll leave it.
Thank you, Rav. You've heard today that this is going to solve every single problem in the game, and also that it's going to solve none of them. What do we do next?
I'm with Jinx, man. Break stuff frequently.
Yeah.
I mean,
we had
so long.
we had artillery Munins for 7 years in a row. So much so that people leaned so heavily on them that it was just pointless.
Yeah, exactly. Compared to the first decade of the game, constant changes, and we just haven't seen that, and it's stale. There's there's all the reasons these huge groups form, and I think touching on the subject of the hypothetical that small groups are going to start taking the block space. It doesn't, even with the projection changes. I don't see it happening in any kind of early time frame. But at least these small groups will be able to fight each other in the space that they're allowed to live currently, or potentially might be able to take in the future without being shat on quite instantaneously. So that's going to be good. Yeah, just constant iteration, and we just need more broken things and deal with it and break some more stuff. Keep things interesting.
Thank you. Villy, what are you going to run for CSM again, win, and fix for us?
On my agenda is probably like citadels. We definitely have to get a variety of things around them fixed, whether it's their defensibility, their cost. The solve mechanics need a strong rework in terms of some ways. In some ways, they're really good right now. Especially with timers, I think there's some major issues that need to be resolved. And I think the capital escalation chain still needs some rework and adjusting. There's lots of ship balancing that should happen. It's hard to say, what you want to focus on first, obviously, but
yeah. Thank you. Dujek, Villy has claimed every single problem in the game. He's left you with nothing, so you'll have to make something up.
I do actually have something that wasn't that, and I think that there are some people who rightfully suggest that, like, if you lean too heavily into projection nerfs, then people will have less fun. They'll log on. They will, like, if you live in the middle of goon space or you live in the middle of frat space, and what you actually want to do is like get out of that space and then go find your content, like adding extra tedium and time to that isn't necessarily great for the game. And what I have been on CCP about doing, and I have let them know when I was on the CSM, and I have campaigned on this, is that there needs to be more things to do if you don't have a very long time to play when you log on. That you can log on, you can find like something interesting to do in the PvP space, especially in half an hour and to 45 minutes. I'm not saying make super ANSI so that you can teleport directly to the nearest person you want to gank. I'm saying that there should always be some PvP content for people who want to do that. And this is not for the people who want to form up a fleet with their 255 best friends and go, like, start a war. That's not a 45-minute task. I'm just saying, like, filaments exist and certain other options exist for this, but it still needs to be iterated on. It still needs to be looked at to get, like, small groups of people into fights quicker.
I would firmly disagree with that one, but yeah.
Well, maybe you can get a flick knife out.
I think like the firmly disagree means that you think that you should never get to have PvP if you only have an hour to play, and I think that's kind of a weird.
No. I think that if you want to have PvP within the hour you have to play, then you have to be deployed somewhere to get it. And the problem is, most people when they say they want PvP, is they want dunks. They don't want to actually PvP.
Yeah.
People are like, why is nobody coming to run into the middle of my guns? It's like, most people can get PvP within 20 minutes if they want it. It's just they don't want to get the PvP that's available to them, right?
And Dujek, I think we've had this conversation as well before. Like where you stage, if you choose to stage somewhere, is important, right? Like I'm pretty sure from Vale, most of our guys get pretty good PvP jumping off into low sec because we stage near low sec for that purpose. So there's
I'm not saying that I get a decent amount of PvP in any amount of time because I am an experienced player and I have staged ships all over the place. I'm just saying, like, this is kind of what I see people who are not very experienced with the game losing interest in the game over, where it's like they don't have a decade or more of experience in finding the fights that they want, so they log on and they think like, okay, I'm going to just roam out from my staging, and that's a bad strategy. It needs to, like, even if they change nothing, if CCP were able to like help teach people a little bit about this within the game and mechanics, and not necessarily
Well,
have it so that
this
new
is one of the
players-
promises of the Exordium and funneling people into the the faction warfare, and that's going a good way in getting people into those spaces where they can just log on, undock, and find some PvP.
I think
I also want to
like
stress that
space
one of the
agnostic, right?
I want to stress one of the
War
important
Fan
parts of
tonight,
this
otherwise
projection
we're
change.
never going to be able to continue the final thoughts for the podcast cut.
We'll go back to this in a moment. But Baz, your thoughts on tonight?
I actually agree with as came to light earlier. I agree with a fair amount with what Kaz said. I do still think fatigue is a good change. I think it's a necessary first step to what continues afterwards. What continues and comes afterwards to further push the game in the direction in our opinion, in my opinion, it should go in, will be necessary. But I think it's a good first step. My main what would be worked on next, or what should be worked on next? Yeah. Thank you, Redline. You don't live in Pochven, so you can't have any input on Pochven income. So we will cede all discussion on Pochven income to Sven, and Sven will undoubtedly tell us that Pochven sites should make 30 billion trillion ISK every site because Sven lives in Pochven, so that and nobody else can have an input. Anyway, what should be worked on next? I don't really know. I think it will be a big change, and I think it will need a bit of time to assess what the next priority is. My main concern moving forward is just the rate of development. Like this FanFest, there was nothing really at FanFest that I thought, oh, that's bad. Like there have been years where I've watched FanFest and gone, this is terrible. Like this is like I hated freelance jobs. I thought it was a huge waste of dev time. Some people have disagreed with that. Some people say it's really useful for their groups. Personally, I've tried to use it. I find it uninteractive to use the interface. I think it's by and large pointless for a player like me. But this year, there wasn't anything that I thought, oh, this is terrible. This is a waste of time. This is bad. But I don't think we really got that much. Like, what did we actually get? Like, you got titles and achievements, which is, it's like the air career
We didn't get any balance passes this year like we did last year.
No.
Well,
The balance
we
pass
probably will.
always
They
happens
always
in the
include a bunch of stuff in like the dev blog. It's like not actually.
To be clear, Phantom,
But there's going to be like
a balance panel where they announced
They
all
said
the
there's going to be
upcoming
more. I think it's
balance
Wallace Navy changes, Griffin Navy changes, Org Navy changes. Like there will be some
Okay.
balance policies. Okay, but my point is, if you look at an expansion from like 2011, there's just so much stuff in it, and now we get 4 new carriers.
But we did
four new
have only 2 expansions a year then, and they've put
we
it
get
out.
titles and achievements. Yeah, but then they went up to quadrants, and then they pulled it back, and now that.
I mean, there is less, absolutely. Over the year, it's less. Yeah.
Shall we get Sven's final thoughts?
Hey, I didn't finish my final thought. There just needs to be more stuff, There just needs to be fucking stuff. What are they working on, man? Like, what are they fucking bin this Frontier shit off, bin this Vanguard shit off, and put some more fucking time on this game. Thank you.
I do kind of echo that. I think more stuff to a certain degree would be very nice. I would also like to add that I think instead of just giving us more new ships, giving us more like mechanics to mess around with would be interesting. I will say though that I think the continued focus in trying to actually figure out an effective strategy to retain new players is good. And this seems to be one of the more promising strategies that I have seen attempted, which is I think a good thing. The new ships look interesting, even if the frigates aren't necessarily super applicable to me. Apart from that, I think the ANSI changes are a long time coming, personally, and I would like to see how the game kind of progresses after that, and then hopefully we can get some good feedback on that, how that changes the sandbox in the current way that nullsec is set up. So
I think Exordium is great. I think it just needed to be done like 10 or 15 years ago.
Well, this
Yeah,
leads
probably.
to my final thought before I give full control over to Redline. And Redline, don't think that I haven't noticed that you've got a cool new haircut. I did notice, by the way. Okay.
I don't have a cool new haircut. I washed my hair, friend.
Burn yourself.
Look, that sounds like I'm grody. All right, let me tell you why. Because Sunday is usually my yard work day.
My final thought isn't about your haircut.
I know, but Sunday is usually my yard work day, and I always come on the show with bad hair, but not today. Because I washed my hair after the yard work.
You cut out.
Oh, I said I usually come to the
Yeah,
show
even
with
his
bad
eyes-
hair, but
yes,
not
what he's
today.
yapping about.
Because I washed my hair before the show.
Okay, all right. My final thought is that we all need to accept that EVE Online is going to be a forever project in terms of balance and changes to the game. However, what is unacceptable is for gigantic, glaring, major issues to take multiple years to be addressed. I'm happy to see this. I'm not happy it's taken so long. However, I'm ready for this to appear, be happy that it's done, and ready to move on to the next thing, and hopefully not spend 7 years campaigning for something blatantly broken to be fixed. And it's all yours, Redline.
I'm just going to jump into fan. I think the problem with the projection issue has always been, though, that it's been such a polarizing issue, right? And let's be clear, like CCP make a lot of changes, and when they misstep, they get crucified by us for it. And I think the projection issue was one of those ones where like they could have very easily misstepped certain things and get crucified, right? So I think it's probably been a long time coming for that reason. Whether that's a valid reason or not is probably a different argument. But
I think the length of time has entrenched the camps and made it a lot more a toxic subject than it could have been.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's.
I mean, the funny thing is, I don't even think they did it like the way that they should have done it. But like, at this point, I think everybody's still happy that they finally did something, right? Like.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's even necessarily the best option, Billy. I think it was just one of the ones we came to when screeching about it against each other.
As always, I have a potentially unlimited amount more to say on the matter, but I'll leave it there, and you can switch our tone. Redline.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? Jesus Lord, have mercy. Look, I don't know how to do any of this. I never have. That's why we didn't win Podcast of the Year. All right? Next year, maybe I'll have it figured out, and we will. But anyways, I guess we're setting a tone. So the tone is that I'm going to try to stop the stream for a moment and then turn it back on with a different title. And we're just going to keep doing the same thing that we've been doing for the last hour and 48 minutes. Sound cool?
Why is Phantom White a tennis ball now?
I think he's always been a tennis ball. But anyways, that's what's going to happen. So stick around right here. Give me like 2 minutes. I'll be right back.